Welcome back, everyone. Let's talk about the product that is the fuel for our hobbies, specifically filament. PLA, ABS, BETG, carbon fiber filled. I venture to guess we all started with PLA. Some of us have never stopped using PLA. It is printing on easy mode. It isn't the strongest or most flexible, but it is forgiving and versatile. You can have a huge temp range when printing. It kind of holds your hand with a huge chance for success for most prints. Low temperature build plate, not a problem. High temperature build plate, usually not a problem. Low temperature nozzle, not a problem. High temperature nozzle, generally not a problem. There's tough PLA, light PLA, wood filled, more combinations than I can guess. When I started my 3D printing journey, I didn't mind matte or flat colors, but I have a soft spot for beautiful colors. Silk PLA. When printed fast, it's matte, but glossy when printed slowly. With a shiny, smooth, and dare I say gorgeous finish, Silk PLA just stands out. Sure, you can post-process any 3D print, but I like just taking a part off the build plate, as is, and marveling at a good, clean print. So let's talk about Silk. Channel friend Eibos 3D sent over their new Silk filament, which was perfect timing for today's project. This is their Artism Series 2 Silk filament, and we have blue-green, black-blue-purple, blue-silver-white, red-yellow-blue, and pink-white-black. This is how you create a custom print profile with certain filaments. So typically you would want to start with whatever filament you're using. In this case, we're just going to do generic PLA. And then we're going to hit the settings button, which is to the right. And we're going to look at a few things. Normally when you select a filament, it'll have a recommended nozzle temperature. This actually doesn't change the temperature, but this is sort of giving you a range what to aim for. But this is where you're actually going to make the change. So there's a few things that you can do here. You can actually say, hey, for this PLA filament, if you wanted to say have it go to 230 and for the first layer and then drop down to another temperature for another layer, you can do that. If you want to make sure that everything starts at the same temperature, you can make sure that everything is at 230 in this example. For our cool plate, 35. For our smooth PEI or high templates, you could say 55, and of course it'll start high and keep that same temperature. And then the volumetric flow usually is how much filament that gets laid down as you're printing. This also will affect the speed of your print. So in certain cases, like a Bambu Lab filament might have 21 or 22 millimeters per second. So this could affect the actual speed. So if you're not exactly sure what exactly you're changing, just simple temperature is fine. Anytime you're looking at any of your filament, the manufacturer will have a recommended print temperature. And then once we're done, we can just hit the save button and then create our custom. Hope if I can spell right. You can create our custom profile, and then you can use it so it shows up in all your profiles, or you can use it just for a particular project. Now I know that everyone doesn't have a whole lot of time to sit through a whole video, so we'll just cut to the chase. If you set your printer to the PLA generic or Bambu Labs PLA and set your speed to about 50, typically you're going to get a pretty decent shiny finish. Now you can run Temp Towers, so this is a PLA Silk Tower. You can of course make your own. Now if you're using that Temp Tower, pretty straightforward. You would pretty much just download it, load up your filament, hit print. But right as you're about to print, you can get a rough idea of what's happening on each of the different layers. So if we go to print preview, so each of these layers will have a different speed. And of course, as you start to go up, it slows down, in which case you should have a shinier finish. Now you can make these yourself. So it can either be a tower, or what I like to do is I like to do the tokens. So you can actually to create my own. So for instance, if I were to just start with a primitive, we'll do a rounded rectangle, and we'll knock this one down to 5. And I've turned off uniform scale, but we'll make the size a little larger, and I'll explain why a little later. And we just want to hollow this out since I don't really need infill or anything. So I'm just going to right click on that one again. Let's click out. All right, so right click in. We're just going to add another one. So in this case, another rounded rectangle. Actually, let's do a negative part. Rounded rectangle. Now, since this is 50 by 50, we want that one to also be close to that, but not take up the entire model. So we'll scale this down to, let's say, 48 by 48. And I'm going to right click on that negative once I click out, and we're going to center this. So now that we've essentially centered it, we're just going to have it do a full cut. So we'll just do a simple right click, and we're just going to mesh boolean. And that just hollowed that out. So it takes out the bottom, takes out the top. Now from here, we're going to add some text so we can mark off what speed we're running at. So we will start with our text here. All right, so let's add that text to, we're going to set our thickness to a 0.2. We don't need to stick out too much. And 5 is fine. And we will do Arial black. So we'll start with the 200. And that'll be 200 millimeters per second. You can adjust this how you like. So effectively, we only need one good one, and then we're going to start cloning. There we go. All right, so depending on what speed you want, that's how many clones you'll have. So if we right click, we'll then clone, and we'll make a few of these. All right, so what we're going to do here, actually, I'm going to turn off one thing because it looks a little distracting. And that is print sequence by object. We'll set this by layer. You normally won't see that. Now, what we're going to do in each of these is going to change these to the speed that we're going to use. So we set one for 200, and then we'll do like 150, 100, you know, whatever speed that you want. Now, of course, just labeling this doesn't change the speed, so make sure we change our speed. So at this point, if we click on this one, we should have outer wall at 200. We can change inner wall to 200 as well. Make the adjustments. This is more like the default, so it actually doesn't matter too much. But if we go, for instance, let's say we're looking at the 150, we want that one to change. Actually, we're going to mesh boolean these, so everything just gets combined into one. That way we can sort of clean up how this looks. So really simple thing. Since we've created them, let's actually just right click and lock in our settings. So right click, mesh, right click, mesh, and then we'll start changing the speed. All right, and then I'm just going to label these. So that one's a 150. This one is a 200. This one's a 100. Whoops. That one's our 75. And last one should be 50. All right, so we'll just start changing the speed to each of these. Now, if you watch any of my previous videos when it comes to the Silk PLA or anything that gives that glossy sheen, you can just do the outer walls, but for right now, we're just going to do the entire model on each of these. So what we'll do is we'll click on one of these and we'll go to our outer wall and inner wall. We're just going to set these to whatever speed that's corresponding to here. I know we don't have any infill, but we'll just do all of that, which is fine. Top surface is kind of a small or narrow section, so it doesn't make a huge difference. And we'll do these things here. So this one's 50. We'll do the same thing for all of these. Now, if you wanted to print these separately, that's fine. What I would recommend you do is switch over to the print by object instead of print by layer. Not that you have to, but sometimes I think our printer cheats when it comes to the speed. All right, and that's me not paying attention. Forgot the 150. And this is 75. All right, and we'll do a quick check to make sure that I didn't overlook anything. So again, if you go to slice, just make sure that your the scheme is set to speed, and you'll get a rough idea on how this will look or what speed it will print at. Now, every so often, depending on the size of your print, you may not actually get the full speed because it's too small an area. So what you can do is you can actually enlarge these a bit. So let's say the 50 by 50 isn't showing in the full speed. So if you notice, there should have been one that's closer to the green color. We can enlarge this just a bit, and I'll show you what I mean. So let's say we take one of the faster ones, and we go to scale, and I'm going to set this to 75 by 75. And we'll go to slice the plate. So when the printer's able to get up to speed, you'll see this. So think about it in terms of if you have a print with a small area and you slow it down, it may already slow down. So as you're looking at your models, if you start to see some that have like a matte finish on parts and a glossy finish on other parts, you can actually change the full speed just to make sure everything is uniform. So for this, I'm actually going to make everything just a little bit larger just so we can compare them. And of course, you can combine them into a full tower if you'd like. Now from here, we get to see that the printer is ramping up in its speed. If you wanted, again, this will print layer by layer. So depending, let's see which one starts first. It looks like it'll start with one of the slower ones and then actually starts to go, this isn't too bad. It'll go in order. If you want it to print one by one, if you don't trust that the speed settings are kicking in, if you go into the global process and then go to others, you can then go to print by object instead of print by layer under print sequence. Now, you can't do this with really tall prints, and in some cases, you're going to see an outline on how far apart some of these items need to be before it throws up an error. Easiest thing to do is if you just go over to the side here, it will organize the prints. Now, this might kick off some of them, so if you notice, 2 of the 5 are kicked off, so the 200, the 150, and the 100 are still here. But what it will do is it will basically just print each item piece by piece by piece. You might have to do this with, multiple times. So again, if you look at how it prints, so it'll start over here before going over there and going over there. All right, so let's print a few of these out and see how it looks. And we'll also see how the other filament takes once we finalize our settings.
Where creations take form with a click and a plan. Helpful videos to guide every step made it easy. Ideas come alive here from screen to reality. Ashley makes it happen, magic in each print. Ashley 3D Print Shop, where dreams come true non-stop. Every design so top, watch it never stop.
Now, I tend to be a sucker for 2 things. One, silk filament, and things that are fidget based. And of course, it seems like the pass-through is all the rage now. And all these models you can find on Maker World. So if you wanted to print your own. And of course, I will leave a link in the description for the Artism II filament. And I will say that Eibos has outdone themselves with this line of filament.
Actually 3D print shop where dreams come true.